Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The saga of Jussie Smollett entered a pretty intense new phase today. A tale of victimhood is now a tale of unimaginable hubris. Smollett stands charged with a felony for plotting his own assault from the very beginning. Tonight we'll investigate how this happened, why it happened. We'll take a close look at Smollett's defenders who dismissed doubts about this story, doubts that any reasonable person would have had from day one, as conspiracy theories. Piers Morgan will join us too. But first, a rundown of everything that's happened today in Chicago, and for that we are joined by Fox's Trace Gallagher. Trace?
And Tucker, the media presence was immense for the Jussie Smollett bond hearing, but in the end, the courtroom drama could not hold a candle to what happened outside. In fact, while Smollett was settling up his $100,000 bond, a prosecutor from the Cook County State Attorney's Office spent 20-plus minutes detailing the entire case, including statements from the brothers who claimed Smollett staged the whole thing. Watch.
Smollett stated that he wanted them to appear to attack him on the evening of January 28, 2019, near his apartment building in Centerville. Defendant Smollett also stated he wanted the brothers to catch his attention by calling him an Empire F, Empire N.
Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, who was deferential to Smollett's initial claim, also lashed out today, saying he was offended by the actor's actions. Watch.
How can an individual who's been embraced by the city of Chicago turn around and slap everyone in this city in the face by making these false claims?
And as Chicago Tribune columnist John Cass points out, Chicago police solve about 17% of the city's thousands of homicides, yet even with the department's thin resources, 24 investigators were assigned to the Smollett case. And today, Superintendent Johnson cited that. Watch.
As I look out into the crowd, I just wish that the families of gun violence in this city got this much attention, because that's who really deserves the amount of attention that we're giving to this particular incident.
Johnson went on to say that he realizes the city of Chicago has a racial divide and that it's hard for the city and country to come together. He also wonders how this might impact future cases. Listen.
My concern is that hate crimes would now publicly be met with a level of skepticism that previously didn't happen.
And we should note Smollett could also face federal charges for allegedly sending himself a phony threat letter containing white powder, which turned out to be Tylenol. His next court appearance, March 14th. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher, thanks for that. Well, there's at least one big unanswered question in the case of Jussie Smollett tonight. Why did this happen? Why would a popular actor on a network TV show, someone who's rich and successful and famous, pay people to assault him and risk going to jail in the process? Well, at a press conference in Chicago today, the police superintendent wondered the same thing.
I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? How could someone look at the hatred and suffering associated with that symbol and see an opportunity to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile?
Well, that's a fair question. What Smollett did was not simply illegal and weird. It was terrible for the country. So why did he do it? Well, the short answer appears to be he wanted a raise at work, and he thought this would get him that. The broader answer, the one that we should all think about, meditate on, is that Smollett was simply responding to the incentives that American society has created for him. Smollett pretended to be a victim because we reward victims. We've decided that it's more heroic to suffer than it is to achieve. That's the message of our culture, our politics, our workplaces. Jussie Smollett was simply doing his best to get ahead according to the rules that others made. And in fact, had his hoax succeeded, there is no doubt Smollett would have been richly rewarded for it. He'd probably get a significant bump in pay and an extended segment on Colbert. He would have been a hero. So Jussie Smollett was not crazy. He knew exactly what he was doing. Faking a hate crime was an entrepreneurial move. In modern America, victimhood is power. That's why so many powerful people claim it. It's why Elizabeth Warren pretended to be an American Indian. It's why at every low point during the entire span of his political career, Barack Obama invoked bias. It's why so many politicians do the same today. I have suffered, you cannot criticize me. The academic left has constructed an entire theology around the holiness of victimhood. It's called intersectionality. It comes with an elaborate rating system in which every group in America is assessed according to how much it has suffered. The more your group says it has been discriminated against, the more moral authority you receive. It's a pretty good deal for a lot of people, and they have no interest in changing it. And that explains why so many on the left initially jumped to Jussie Smollett's defense. They weren't simply defending him, they were defending identity politics. We could give you any number of examples of this, but we'll skip ahead to the most nauseating one of all. Watch anchor Robin Roberts of ABC, quote, News, beam with joy after Smollett finishes the most dishonest performance of his life, and then tell him his lies are beautiful.
I still want to believe, with everything that has happened, that there's something called justice. Because if I stop believing that, then what's it all for? Thank you, Jussie.
Thank you, Jussie. Well, before he claimed that white supremacists beat him up on the street, most people had never heard of Jussie Smollett. And after he became a victim, everybody wanted to be his friend. Here's Don Lemon over on CNN bragging about how he texts his new pal Jussie every single day. He's got Jussie's cell number. That's how close they are. Really tight.
My concern is for him.
Right, right.
And for his well-being. Every day, I say, I know you think I'm annoying. I can show you a text. I know you think I'm annoying, you, but I just want to know that you're doing.
Oh, okay.
That you're okay.
Yeah.
If you need somebody, you can talk to me. Because there's not a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Sometimes he responds, sometimes he doesn't. He responds and says, you are not annoying.
You can talk to me, Don Lemon says, because there aren't a lot of us out there. Well, here's the translation. Us means people who've been oppressed in the ways that Jussie Smollett has been oppressed. Lemon is letting you know that he's in that group too. Yes, he's a highly paid news anchor with his own TV show, and yet, like Jussie Smollett, Don Lemon is a holy victim. So there's a mad scramble over who's the victim here. Who is the victim? Well, there is one. What Smollett did was not a victimless crime. There's no such thing as that. An entire group of people did get slandered by this hoax. Regular people from outside the coastal cities. People with the wrong political beliefs and the wrong skin color. Smollett and his many defenders savagely attacked these people and are not apologizing for doing it. Instead, they're telling you, you hear this everywhere, that the real losers here are the authentic victims of hate crimes who won't be believed the next time. Okay, that's fine. But what about the innocent Americans they just poured venom on for 2 weeks because it matched some bigoted stereotype they had about Middle America? What about them? There's no mention of them. Don Lemon would very much like to keep up those attacks on those people. Attacking them allows him to feel oppressed. That is why when Smollett was finally caught, Lemon reacted in a very puzzling way. He didn't seem especially concerned that his buddy had lied to further divide the country to hurt America, which he did. No. That wasn't the real problem. The real problem, according to Don Lemon, is that Smollett's arrest might discredit the cult of victimhood.
This is playing out every single moment in cable news. Sean Hannity's going to eat Jussie Smollett's lunch every single second. Tucker Carlson is going to eat Jussie Smollett's lunch every single second.
Yeah, because when you tell the truth about a hate hoax, you're the real hater. What's the cost of this attitude so floridly on display to our society? What does it do to us? Well, think of it this way. What would happen to your kids if you woke them up every morning by telling them that they were victims? No matter how hard they worked, people would always hate them just for who they are. What if you did that? Would that be good parenting? Would it make your kids stronger, happier, more successful? No, it wouldn't. And good parents would never do that. Good parents tell their kids to take responsibility for their lives, not to blame others, to work as hard as they can to overcome obstacles. That's what good parents of all races and all backgrounds tell their kids. And if you don't believe it, just ask 10 well-adjusted, accomplished people if their parents allowed them to feel like victims. Again, it doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like. Ask them, did your parents tell you you're a victim? And not one of them will say yes. And yet we tell our citizens just the opposite. And you see the effects very clearly in the workplace, for example. In the years after the 2008 recession, there was an enormous surge of claims of workplace bias of all kinds. There is still no evidence that bigotry itself increased at all during those years. And yet when people felt threatened by a teetering economy, they knew that claiming victimhood status would give them an advantage. Can you blame them? No, you really can't. Not really. They didn't write the rules of our society. They're just following the rules that people like Don Lemon wrote. but at great cost. Piers Morgan is editor-at-large of DailyMail.com and a keen observer of everything that happens in the world. He joins us today. So, Piers, as a guy who's been in the news business for a long time, you must be wondering, why were the reporters following this the most credulous of all? Why didn't they smell a rat?
Well, it was the perfect storm, wasn't it, Tucker? This is where the victimhood culture that you so brilliantly articulated there meets Trump derangement syndrome, this disease which has afflicted so many, particularly liberal celebrities. And I think in Jussie Smollett, you had greed as a motivation, but you also had, he wanted to be a celebrity victim, as you said. He wanted people to feel sorry for him, to like him, to retweet him. But also he wanted to use the prism of his hatred for Donald Trump and all things Trump as the bedrock for this. They had to be two white Trump supporters in Making America Great caps who attacked him, because he knew that that would be the perfect vehicle to turn him into American hero. That actually, if he was attacked by Trump supporters who lynched him, or tried to lynch him with a noose and really, committing one of the worst hate crimes imaginable, then Jussie Smollett, would become a hero, and he would be a heroic victim. And in fact, he went further. In the Robin Roberts interview, he said that he fought back against these two guys. Well, we've now seen the size of them. These are two very big men. And our hero, Jussie, fought back. So he's a victim, but a hero who also fought back. And I look at this whole story. I tweet every day, all day. And I write columns 2-3 times a week. I didn't say a word about this, Tucker, from the moment the story broke.
I didn't know.
Something about this stank from the moment it happened. And I just stayed very quiet. I waited and I watched and I waited and I watched. And all the time, more and more stuff came out, from him not releasing his phone, to then releasing redacted records, to so on and so on. And slowly but surely the real story built up. But this guy had completely invented the whole attack. He'd staged it. He'd roped in his friends to do this. And I'm sorry, but I've already seen on social media people starting to feel sorry for this guy. We should cut him some slack. He's got mental health issues. That's always the first refuse of excuse for this kind of behavior. He's not mentally ill. He's greedy. And he's somebody who was craving attention. And a lot of the media, as I think is very apparent from this story, a lot of the mainstream media in America have gone so full-on anti-Trump that they were prepared to suspend all journalistic integrity and credibility in the way they reported this story by just believing every word this guy said. And they did it, Tucker, because we're now in a culture where my truth is perceived to be the truth. And it's not. Time and again now we see people where their truth, their idea of a truth, is a complete lie. Jussie Smollett claimed to have been effectively lynched. Everybody followed up with this. All the top Democrats were tweeting Kamala Harris to Cory Booker. It was a lynching. They were trying to lynch this guy. But it wasn't. The only thing that was lynched was the truth.
That's right. And the press embedded at the channel that you and I once worked at, among them. Piers Morgan, such a smart summation, as always. It's great to see you. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
We've got more in this story now. We'll be joined later in the show by Dan Bongino and Chadwick Moore for even more on why this happened, what it means, and what happens next. That's in just a bit. We live in the age of the woke billionaire. Bet you never thought you'd live to see that. We're seeing it. Why are the biggest winners in our economic system endorsing socialism for America? There's a reason for that. We'll tell you what it is after the break. 2019 is only a couple months old. We haven't given it a name yet. So how about the year of the woke billionaire? Sit back and watch as the Democratic presidential candidates simultaneously jockey to establish the most left-wing possible credentials, and at the very same time, feverishly suck up to the super rich to fund their campaigns. We've seen some of this before. Tom Steyer and George Soros, those are the obvious examples. But there are many, many, many more. On Saturday, just this past Saturday, coming Saturday rather, Senator Cory Booker is attending a Silicon Valley fundraiser. It's hosted by Gary and Laura Lauder. They're heirs to the $14 billion Estee Lauder fortune. Kamala Harris just had a fundraiser in Beverly Hills that was attended by an army of wealthy studio execs. Kirsten Gillibrand didn't even start her campaign for president before asking the permission of Wall Street. So what's the message? Rich people are highly progressive now. And you can see why. They love mass immigration, it brings them servants, they support federally mandated snobbery masquerading as environmentalism. Abortion is essentially a sacrament to them, especially when practiced in poor neighborhoods. But here's the confusing part. These are, by definition, affluent people, and yet increasingly, confiscatory tax rates are a rallying cry for the Democratic Party. So why are billionaires so eager to back candidates who want to seize their assets to fund new entitlements? This is confusing. Here's one reason. Billionaires understand that they will never have to pay those taxes. Why? Because the top federal income tax rate stops at about $500,000. So what's the difference between someone making $500,000 a year and someone making $50 million a year? The answer? The richer one can much more easily evade paying full freight, and they do. This group makes far more of their money on capital gains, which are taxed at only half the rate of your salary, and some of it's not even taxed at all. Under the 2017 tax law, investments in federally designated opportunity zones evade capital gains taxes entirely. One such opportunity zone, by the way, is right by the Army-Navy Country Club in Arlington, Virginia, one of America's richest zip codes. But even on their official tax returns, even on income, the richest Americans are paying less. According to the IRS, the top 1% of Americans pay about 27% of their income in taxes. But the top 10th of 1%, that's people who make $35 million a year, pay less than 26%. And the top 1,000th of a percent, the absolute richest, pay less than 24%. In other words, past a certain point, the richer you are, the less you pay. That's why billionaires back socialism. It doesn't cost them much. Dana Perino hosts the Daily Briefing with Dana Perino. She's also coming on later in the show on Final Exam with Greg Gutfeld. But for now, Dana, I'm rooting for you, as you know. Don't tell him. There is this really interesting dynamic where the Democratic Party, is becoming openly socialist in some cases, but certainly embracing economic populism, but it's still funded by the richest segment of our society. How does that work?
It is pretty interesting, and actually to have Bernie Sanders launch his campaign in the week after basically another fellow Democratic socialist chased Amazon out of New York City, it put Bernie Sanders to the left of Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo. It's not easy to do that. In some ways, I feel like Bernie has been a victim of his own success. He has won this war without even firing a shot. In 2016, he basically said, this is what I'm going to be for. He ran unabashedly on it, and he had a lot of support. And I think if the Democrats hadn't rigged their primary, he might have actually been the nominee. Perhaps good for him that he wasn't, because then he had time to let these ideas percolate. Do you think there would be an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in 2020, or 2019, if there had not been a Bernie Sanders in 2016?
No, it's a good point.
Absolutely not. And also, the other thing you have is you have Democratic candidates like Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, both taking great pains this week to say that they are not socialists. They are capitalists, and they have to explain it. But you have to ask yourself, is it a distinction without a difference? If you are talking about free health care for all, free college for all, unabashedly bashing the financial institutions, and promising lots of things that are going to look like a socialist country, that is why the Democrats find themselves already, in February of 2019, on the losing end of a debate with Donald Trump.
We're almost out of time, but I'm just interested, since you're steeped in the numbers, are they going to lose that debate? I mean, they'll lose it as far as I'm concerned, but is the public on the side of capitalism or socialism? Sincere question.
Well, I actually think that Karl Rove has talked about this for a while, and he's right. If younger people in America say that they more align with socialism, we should take them seriously. Yeah. Just this week, Tucker, we found that most people in America could not pass a basic citizenship test that immigrants have to take in order to get a chance to live here in America. So we have a lot of making up to do, but I do think that the country is still a center-right country, but conservatives, capitalists, people who do not want socialism have to try to make a very good case for it, because Bernie Sanders has a grassroots organization across the country willing to send him $25 over and over and over again. That makes a big difference. They're not just going to big donors and billionaires to get funding, even though they do that too. They have support all across the country, and people should take that very seriously.
Yeah, they should take it. I couldn't agree more. There's a reason people feel that way. Dana Perino, it's great to see you, as always. We're going to see you in just a minute.
Okay.
Well, the Democratic Party is changing very fast, as you know. We try to chronicle it on this show. They're for socialism now. They're also embracing reparations for slavery, something that people talk about in the fringes. No big candidate has ever endorsed it. A bunch did just in the last week. That's next. Harris came up with a new policy position. She now says she supports reparations for slavery.
We have got to address that. Again, it's back to the inequities. Look, America has a history of 200 years of slavery. People aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
It used to be an eccentric opinion. Suddenly lots of people seem to have it, not just Kamala Harris. Just today, Senator Elizabeth Warren, maybe under the influence of peyote, said that she also supports reparations. So did Julian Castro. Just 2 years ago, keep in mind, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were both asked about this, and both said they opposed it. 5 years from now, we'll be tearing down statues for taking that position, but that's where we are today. Author and columnist Mark Stein has been following this and joins us tonight. Seems like things are moving kind of fast, Mark.
Yeah, they are, and this is disturbing if reparations is becoming a mainstream position. It's particularly absurd, I think, for Elizabeth Warren to be in favor of that. This is someone who, in a sense, has benefited from a fake appropriation of racial grievance, as you know, the business about her being 1024th Native American, presumably, and yet presenting herself as Harvard Law School's first woman of color. That's what happens when you actually get into this sort of neo-apartheid of racial classification. And I find it particularly absurd. I mean, when Kamala Harris says people are not starting from the same point, slavery was abolished a century and a half ago. Nobody alive today has a grandparent who was a slave. And in that sense, I think you reach a point where, you need to move on. I mean, the reparations thing, eventually, as the decades go by, becomes ridiculous. I'm Canadian. I think you guys should give us reparations, because if you hadn't had the revolution, we'd have the whole continent would now be Canada. And if you were going to steal our land from us and drive the loyalists out, Tucker, you could at least have divided the continent east-west so that we Canadians weren't holed up in the cold bit.
Which half would you take?
Well, exactly. I think I'd have the half without the Californian presidential candidates in it, on balance, or maybe the bit in the middle, and you guys could have the two coasts. But the point here is this is nothing real. This is nothing real to the lived experience of people of all kinds of identities today, and certainly not to Kamala. Kamala Harris has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. And I don't know whether it's the identity politics, as her father was suggesting earlier today. I don't know whether it's this whole identity politics obsession that means she has to feel she has to genuflect to this, because her own experience is in fact entirely apart from the African American slave experience.
It's also bad, though. It's really divisive. Mark Stein, great to see you. Thank you for that. Divisive. It is.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
See ya. Time now for final exam. Two contestants create chaos on set during their last match-off. Will face off again. Get ready for Dana Perino and Greg Gutfeld in this week's news quiz. See if you can beat them. We'll be right back. Attention to what's happened over the last week. Our defending champion Lauren Blanchard is on assignment. So tonight we have a New York City special edition for you. Two long-standing bitter rivals of many decades. Dana Perino and Greg Gutfeld, co-hosts of The Five, join us tonight. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, we're glad to be here.
Wish I could say it.
Greg is so happy to be here.
Yes.
Bitter
Right now
rivals
I'd
might
be
a
eating
little strong.
ribs, Tucker. I'd be eating ribs and drinking wine and watching a rerun of Friends.
We're going to see if that
Actually, he
kind of
watches your show
preparation
every night.
serves you
Don't think
well.
that he doesn't.
I mean, so I think if you were to ask our audience, who's done more prep work for this segment? Yeah, that's exactly right.
I know,
Okay, so
but
you know the rules. I'm going to run through them super quick.
Okay.
Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer. You have to wait until I finish asking the question before you answer it.
Like Alex Trebek.
Exactly. You can answer once I acknowledge by saying your name.
Okay.
Every correct answer gets you 1 point. If you lose a question, we detract a point. So you could actually get into negative territory pretty fast. Best of 5 wins.
Best of 5.
Make sense?
Yes.
Best of the 5, right here.
Best of 5. D5. All right, question 1. Here it is. If elected in November of 2020, Bernie Sanders would be the oldest president in American history. How old would he be on Inauguration Day?
She came in early.
77. You're right. I did
No,
cheat.
unfortunately, I can't hear you. I can only hear our judges yelling in my ear. It goes to Greg.
Yeah.
Sorry. Dana,
you
obviously
didn't know
I'm
the
rooting for
answer.
you.
I'd say 80, but I already won.
77.
Okay, so Greg gets to answer. You're saying 80, Greg?
No, I already won. I'm not answering. I'm taking the 5th. Taking the 5th.
No, you have to answer the question.
Talk to my lawyer. I already
Give the
won.
answer.
You said 80.
77.
All right, 77.
77. All right, we're going to go to the tape. Is it 77? It'll be 79.
You! That is so. No. We're not doing this anymore. She cheats. This happened last time.
So you thought you were benefiting
77
from
now.
her premature buzz, but actually you are now in
Okay,
negative
that
territory.
is a total setup. This happened last time she was reading off the teleprompter. Or was that Judge Janine?
I think I'm pretty sure that was Judge Janine. I don't think anyone believes Dana Perino would do that.
All right. Well, she
Okay,
jumped the
question
gun.
2.
You know what
Now,
it is?
this is
Your questions are too long, Tucker.
Okay, this is an even longer one. It's a multiple choice, so be sure you've heard all the options before answering. Here it is.
So mad.
2020 hopeful Kirsten Gillibrand of New York had a campaign event in Iowa at a bar this week. Her speech was interrupted when a woman pushed past her on a mission to find which condiment. Was it A, hot sauce? Was it B, ranch dressing? Or was it C, Dana Perino's famous queso? Dana Perino.
It is B, ranch dressing.
Is it B? It wasn't your famous queso. Is it B, ranch dressing? To the tape we go.
Base and the grassroots care about. Sorry, man.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get some ranch.
Go ahead.
Just wanted some ranch. Just like
look at
everybody.
that. Look at that. You are
That was so
one up.
easy because no one's going to go for Dana's queso.
No one.
That looks
I
like
don't
a
know.
corpse.
Actually, that was my guess. You never know at a Gillibrand campaign event. All right, question 3. A Democratic congressman became a bit of a laughingstock in digital world yesterday on Twitter. This congressman bragged to his followers that he walked an entire extra block to get his coffee. This was an effort to boycott Trump Tower. Who was it? Greg, go.
Swalwell.
Are you going to give that to him?
Yes.
Are you going to give
I'm
him
mocking his name.
I'm not sure I
Eric
know what that means.
Swalwell.
Let's see if your answer matches our tape.
All right, Eric Swalwell, California Democrat.
He turned a trip to go to Starbucks into this political statement, tweeting this. It's snowing in New York. I need coffee. The closest cafe is inside Trump Tower. This is me walking to
Our
an
judges say-
alternative.
They're giving it to you, even though you sound like the parents in a peanut cartoon.
that is
I was mocking his name.
They're trying to appease you.
That's good enough. No, I don't think they are. That is good enough. You are back. I think you're back to 0.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Story of my life.
All right, question 4. If you looked up at the night sky this week, if you didn't live in New York City, for example, you may have seen an interesting lunar spectacle. The winter moon appeared extra bright because it was thousands of miles closer to the Earth than it normally is. There's a name for this event, and the hint is it has something to do with winter weather. Okay, if you were to look outside your apartment,
I don't do that.
okay.
I usually sit in a dark room and listen to death metal.
Wait, I knew. I saw the picture. It was tweeted.
Guess.
It was picture, right.
Guess.
Dana.
It's not a harvest moon. The lunar moon.
She said harvest moon.
What do you? No, she said it's not a harvest moon. What is your answer?
I don't know. I said lunar moon, but it doesn't make any sense because
Lunar moon. That would be redundant, but it might still be the answer. We'll find out.
Zero.
A super snow moon. TJ is wrapped watching this. It's called super, TJ, because the moon is at its closest to Earth right now, and it's full. And February's full moon is known as a snow moon because many associated the month with heavy snowfall.
Yeah. Okay, so the statisticians in our control room are saying, they just checked the books, this is
Not
the
a lunar
first
moon?
ever 0-0 final questions. You're going into sudden death with no points on the board.
Sudden death, it just might be his, okay?
Yes. All right. So here's the final question. It's a multiple choice. You have to wait till I finish asking it. A statue of Abraham Lincoln in the state of California has become very popular online because of its unusual depiction of our 16th president. What is so strange about this particular Lincoln? Is it A, he's young and shirtless, B, he's holding a kitten, C, he's on rollerblades?
Okay.
You sound resigned.
I have no idea. I have not seen this statue or anything, but he was a big animal rights activist, actually, for his time. So I'm going to go with B, holding a kitten.
Was Abraham Lincoln holding a kitten in the statue in California? To the tape.
Sure, it's rollerblades. Come on.
Reminder that the Los Angeles Federal Courthouse has a statue of Abraham Lincoln where he's a shirtless young stud, suggestively tugging at his waistband like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. Abraham Lincoln like you've never seen him before.
I really don't think you should ever be asked to do
So I won with the score of 0.
I'm not even sure what to say. My mouth is open. This is the lowest score ever recorded in the history,
We are little
history
people,
of the show.
and we have little scores.
Yeah, we have little scores.
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Greg
so
Gutfeld,
embarrassed.
you win with 0, and next time I see you, I will award you our Eric Wempel.
But I can't believe you guys gave him Eric Swall Wall. That is not his name.
Oh, come on. You're going to talk about this for the end of time.
Well, that may be how it's pronounced. What do I know? I'm not.
You have him on your show all
He's
the
our next
time.
president.
I watch your show.
He's our next president.
It's unbelievable. Thank you. You've entered the history books.
Yes.
Congratulations to you both.
Thank you. We're very honored.
Thank you, Tucker, if that's your real name.
Congratulations. That's it for this week's final exam, if you can call it that. Pay attention to the news each week. Tune in Thursdays to see if you can beat our pros. Hint, yes, you can. We'll be right back.
Would be an apology to this city that he smeared, admitting what he did, and then be man enough to offer what he should offer up in terms of all the resources that were put into this.
So as journalists and politicians raced to see who could say the most embarrassingly credulous things about Jussie Smollett's obvious hate hoax, the police did their jobs. They stayed calm, they made no assumptions, they investigated it thoroughly, and they discovered something shocking. And for that, they're being attacked. Just moments ago, Smollett's attorney released a statement saying this, quote, Mr. Smollett is a young man of impeccable character and integrity who fiercely and solemnly maintains his innocence and feels betrayed by his system that apparently wants to skip due process and proceed directly to sentencing. Dan Bongino is a former officer with the NYPD, and he joins us tonight. So, Dan, you've watched this from beginning until now, and it's still unfolding, but what are the main conclusions you're drawing from what you've seen?
Well, Tucker, it's amazing we've spent all this money in this country on an education system that claims to teach, critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
But if you thought critically about this case from the beginning, you would have never jumped to the conclusion. And, listen, I spent a lot of time with the Secret Service and the NYPD, but you don't have to be a law enforcement officer to have seen the red flags in the case, Tucker. First, if you are attacked like this violently at night, who doesn't turn over their police records to immediately clear themselves and try to get the actual bad guys? It just didn't make sense. And that statement you just read, is outrageous. He's not entitled to due process. Tucker, he was given every single benefit by the media, by everyone else. The benefits, by the way, you and I we would have been questioned about this vigorously from the beginning. And now he's claiming somehow that he's a martyr in this? Listen, of course you're presumed innocent. I get that. But that's a ridiculous statement to try to paint yourself as a martyr when you haven't even cooperated with the police from the beginning. It's absurd.
At some point, he's going to put the media in a pretty tough spot. If he continues to deny this and say that he's once again the victims of yet another persecution or whatever, can Don Lemon sit there on CNN and not defend him?
At some point when these kids on Twitter, they say you got to take the L. At some point, you got to take the loss. Tucker, it's binary at this point, is it not? They have these two brothers, these people that they're questioning, apparently involved in this. They're either the attackers or they're not. If they're cooperating and they've been released, what does that say to you as someone who thinks in common sense terms? They're either the attackers or they're not. They've been released. Clearly there's something wrong with this case, and it appears that when you take it all and you look at it, that Smollett's the guy who's not been clear, open, and honest here.
I just don't understand how we're sort of eliding over what this guy really did, which is use racial stereotypes to attack fellow Americans, and no one's kind of saying that. I'm not really sure why.
Right. It's not just that he lied. It's that he took it to the next level. He added a bunch of, let's call them aggravating factors, Tucker. Oh, they were wearing MAGA hats, and they screamed, "This is MAGA country." And then they put a noose, one of the most abhorrent symbols of a troubled time in American history. It's all these aggravating things he threw on top, as if being attacked and claiming it was Trump supporters wasn't bad enough, Tucker. We got to put bleach in it and a noose, and they screamed, "It's MAGA country." I mean, it really speaks to, if this didn't happen, and this is all a hoax, a level of serious depravity. This guy could need some serious help.
So I just want to do super quick, kind of check on your sensibility about all this. So you work in journalism. Robin Roberts over at ABC, quote, News works in journalism. She heard Jussie Smollett's story, and she concluded it was, quote, beautiful. Was there ever a moment when you heard his story and you thought to yourself, that's beautiful?
No, I thought it's questionable. But Robin Roberts needed that story to be true and wanted it to be true. And it's clear from the questioning. There was not one critical question asked of a guy with a very suspect story. It's a real shame, and it's a stain on journalism.
Yeah, that's nicely put. Dan Bongino, great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you too, Tucker. See you next week.
Well, after his court hearing today, Jussie Smollett returned to work at the show Empire. According to reports, Smollett kept crew waiting for at least 30 minutes in order to film his scene. This was today. When he arrived, he begged the crew and his fellow actors to believe him, to believe in his innocence. He said this, quote, "I would never do this to any of you. You are my family. I swear to God I did not do this." End quote. Well, the press didn't need that kind of begging to believe Jussie Smollett. Virtually everyone in the press was ready to believe him anyway.
What we do know is that racism is alive and well in this country. There is real evidence of people who have done these crimes who cite that the president has inspired them.
The fact that it reportedly said this is MAGA country adds to sort of the atmosphere of menace that African Americans in particular, and people of color in general, have felt since the advent of the Trump administration.
He said his attackers hurled racial and homophobic slurs at him. And this is America in 2019.
So there are a lot of dumb, credulous people in the media. Chadwick Moore is not one of them. He was not fooled. He predicted the outcome of the Smollett case more than 2 weeks ago, and Dallas was attacked for it, but joins us now for a well-deserved, I don't want to call it a victory lap, but you were right, and we want to acknowledge that you were. Chadwick Moore, great to see you. So you looked at this story, looked at the facts, and you didn't buy it.
I didn't buy it from the first sentence of the first report that I read, and it wasn't even just MAGA country, which made me laugh out loud, and I think a lot of people, because what Trump supporter would say that, everyone knew that was fake.
Exactly.
My first question when I read the story was, I thought, what was the weather last night in Chicago? Looked it up, and it was -20 with the wind chill. That was the first thing that tipped me off. They're like, something isn't right here. Now, we expect that is the most simple question to ask. Yeah. We expect our journalists to be able to, that would be the most basic thing I would look up. None of them did it. And now what we see with the media is they are legitimately gaslighting the American public and saying, no, we handled this very, very well. We were very fair. They're saying a lot of celebrities and activists on Twitter ran with it, and you're confusing us with them. No, you can certifiably look up Washington Post, ABC News, NBC News, the Associated Press, The Guardian. You can go on forever. They all ran with the story. They all never said alleged attack. They never said claims. They said he was definitively attacked. Now they're circling their wagons, and now they are defending one another. I've never seen a journalist ever have true remorse, ever go through a period of, or very rarely, a period of self-reflection. And we're not going to see it here. Brian Stelter over at CNN is sort of leading the charge with this. It's about they're continuing to protect their own, protect their industry, and they just simply do not care about the truth. They do not care about being anything but activists at this point.
No, I think that's absolutely right. What's interesting is that there doesn't seem to be any penalty in this deeply corrupt business of journalism for getting it wrong in one direction. But if you had come out in public 2 weeks ago, I had doubts myself about this story. It seemed obviously like there were at least holes in it. I was afraid to express those doubts in public. It's not worth it, actually. There would have been massive penalty for doubting this in public, and yet isn't our job supposed to be skepticism?
Exactly, and I sort of thought the same thing. I said, if I'm wrong, this could really be a big hit to my career. Yeah. I was just so convinced I wasn't. Nothing about it made sense. Meanwhile, at the time when a few brave people were actually expressing skepticism, they were called conspiracy theorists by the media. They were maligned, and they were treated like kooks. And it turns out they were right all along. The media will just move on. They don't care. I mean, they are really the propagators of all this. They are the reason why Jesse Smollett felt like he could get away with this, because he knew they would be on his side, because they created this fake narrative of armies of racist Trump supporters marching around and assaulting people. So why would he think that he wouldn't get away with it?
No, it's a good point. And you of all people know what it's like to be inside journalism and take a view that is not considered acceptable. You came out in favor of Donald Trump and had people basically try to destroy your life.
Exactly, and that a lot of happened. We just saw recently that reporter, I believe she was from CBS News, who came out and
Laura Logan.
Yes, that's right, and deflected. And there's another case recently. It's so rare to see this, but another case, I believe it was an NPR chief who did a similar thing. It's almost like when these journalists actually seek out the truth and actually try to get to know these boogeymen, Trump supporters, they almost seem to always deflect afterwards, and they sort of tend to see the horrors that are happening in their industry. You know, journalists they couldn't be more disconnected. I think that the Democrat politicians who ran with this story from day one are genuinely corrupt, and they're smart enough to see the holes in it.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and the journalists who ran with it, some I'm sure, but I think it was mainly a case of profound stupidity. Well,
that's not reassuring. You know why? It's because all the smart kids go into finance. I don't think any our homegrown geniuses are rushing to the New York Times anymore. Javik Moore, great to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, speaking of the presidential candidates, Kamala Harris has lost no time resorting to stereotypes to advance her cause. True. She recently bragged about smoking a ton of weed in college and listening to Tupac. Tupac Shakur had not released any music at the time, it turned out. So when pressed on her commitment to legalizing weed, Harris resorted to another stereotype. Come on, Mon, I'm Jamaican. She said, I'm Jamaican. Okay. One person who didn't think that was that funny was her own father. He's a Stanford professor called Donald Harris. He released a statement condemning what his daughter said. Quote, "My dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their graves right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics. Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this tragedy." It's amazing. But it really shouldn't surprise you. She was trafficking in stereotypes completely. Not every Jamaican has dreadlocks and smokes weed all day, and you really have to be Kamala Harris to think otherwise. Amazing. That's it for us tonight. Good night from Washington. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. You're not going to believe what happened. Sean Hannity, right now.
All right, that was